We have 2 mics. Any more? That's good. Oh, I got one here. All right, good. All right. Just go with the flow. It's not just a saying that we say every now and then. It's really a way of life to create space for grace, to really allow for that grace to happen. There's 2 things that stop it or block it or slow us down, because you can't really stop grace. You can't really totally eliminate it from your awareness, but you can be focused on your own thoughts and fears and all of the stories that you're telling yourself. Before you know it, you've forgotten who you are. You've forgotten that this universe is full of love and grace and light and healing and wondrous people and great adventures and amazing, magnificent unfolding of who you are. You've forgotten all of that, and sometimes we end up being in a place where we get disappointed and we don't think that the world's ever going to change. And it's just going to continue in the violence and the war and the separation. And we get discouraged. And we may at some time say, where is God in all of this? Well, I think we've located the source of God, the source of all love and light. It's right here in our own heart. That's why we sang that song, Raising the Veil. God is right here in my heart. And it's time, this is the time for each of us to stand up and not just say it and not just believe it, but demonstrate it. It's so important that we stand up and demonstrate it now. In traditional Christian theology, grace is seen as something that's bestowed on us from a higher power, from a greater being, or perhaps an experience that we can earn by following religious law, or a quality that's possessed by the rare few, or a commodity, this grace, this spiritual energy. Some of us think it's a commodity that we earn, but it's none of that. And we know that it's a constant state. We think, or we thought perhaps, something given to us by a God out there. Something we don't deserve. There's another one. That guilt. I don't deserve it. I'm not worthy. Right? But yeah, right? I am worthy. Bring it on, please. I need it. I'm worthy. I want that grace. Because in my experience, grace is a constant state of perfection, of awareness of the perfection of the universe. It's built into the very fabric of the universe. And it's possessed by each and every one of us in the exact same amount. It's in you. It's not something that you go out and get. It's in you and it's all around you at the same time. The only thing that we need to do to access that spiritual energy that we call grace is to make room for it in our consciousness. We fill up our consciousness with everything out there. And these days it's even more tempting to just be looking at your computer screen or your phone or your iPad and reading the news and scrolling and getting more and more. It's just tempting. You think something's going on there. And it's like after 5 minutes I'm going, it's the same old story. There's nothing going on there. I need a little grace. I need a little something different, a different experience. I notice that if I'm looking at everything that's going on out there, thinking it's separate from me, thinking, what can I do about it? And I get really agitated. Start to get really nervous and upset, that this is the world I'm living in. I start to get upset at the people around me for no reason at all. It's crazy. When in fact, it's not the world I'm living in. It's a world that's going on inside of my head because of images that I'm looking at on a screen. But the brain doesn't know the difference, guys. Your brain does not know the difference between a story you're telling yourself or if it's actually happening. You're going to have the same reaction. It's going to stimulate your amygdala, your survival mechanism. It's going to do a lot of different things chemically in your body, and you're going to start reacting to your environment as if it's true. It's really important, especially these days, to keep reminding yourself of the truth and then sitting in it. Lily teaches me some nice mindfulness breathing techniques, which I employ. And I've taken on the practice of meditating every morning. Even if it's just 10 minutes, you can do it. I noticed that the first day, 5 of that 10 minutes, I was talking to myself. It took me 5 minutes to calm that voice down, to focus on my breath. And now I can go 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And you'll find that you'll get more and more peace, which means what? You're experiencing more and more grace. You're creating space for grace. If you find yourself in an argument or a tough conversation with someone, create space for grace. Do it. You're the one who has to do it. Create space for grace. Something that's fearful, a change in your life perhaps, or someone's making their transition, or some other big life moment is happening for you. Stop. Create space for grace. Create that space that you can see the blessing in the situation, that you can allow Spirit to take over. So I want to talk about 2 aspects of grace, if you allow me for these next few minutes. The grace that resides within us, but also the environment of grace, that field of spiritual energy. Wes likes to talk about that, spiritual energy. He's very aware of the spiritual energy that we create by coming together in a place like this, in an environment of grace. We create more spiritual energy. And when you're looking for that, when that's what your antenna are receiving, you're looking for that information, that's the frequency you're tuning into, then that's where you're going to go every day. You're going to go tune into that frequency. And you're going to go, oh, that's the station I like. I got it. That's where I experience my true self. That's where I experience God, on that station. Create the space in your mind to tune in and fine-tune that for yourself through prayer, through meditation, and through conscious relationships where you're really connecting with one another on the deepest level possible. And the next day, connect deeper. Just do it. Just say, this is the frequency I want to communicate with you. I don't want to see my brothers and sisters, my neighbors, as figures in a story that's not true, in a story that I'm making up. I want to see you as the representation of God that you are. I want to see the Christ in you. And the way that I do that is to make space for it. Create space for grace. So grace, it's this field of spiritual energy which pervades the totality of existence. It's like the air we breathe into our bodies. Grace is what we breathe into our spirits. Keeps our spirituality, our awareness of our spiritual nature, which is what we call spirituality, alive in us. It's the substance we breathe. If there were a substance that you would breathe in heaven, if there was an air you could breathe in heaven, it would be grace. The air we breathe into our bodies, that's the air, that's grace, is the air of heaven. If you can imagine yourself without a body for a second, what would you breathe? The energy of grace, spiritual energy. It's not something that's confined to our experience on earth. It's where earth and heaven meet. That's where grace is experienced. That's where you become aware of grace, where earth and heaven meet. So, by grace we live. By grace we live, and by grace we are released from everything, from every thought of separation that we've invented. This is from lesson 169 in A Course in Miracles. I would love to read just a little bit of it to you. Are you open for this? Are you ready? Yes? Yes? Okay. Awesome. This is amazing stuff. Grace is acceptance of the love of God within a world of seeming hate and fear. Seeming hate and fear. Something we made up. It seems like there's a lot of hate and fear around, but grace is the acceptance of the love of God no matter what seems to be around us. By grace alone, the hate and fear are gone. Do you want to end the hate and fear in this world? Create space for grace. By grace alone are the hate and fear gone. For grace represents or presents a state so opposite to everything the world contains that those whose minds are lighted by the gift of grace cannot believe that the world of fear is real. Those whose minds are lighted by the gift of grace cannot believe the world of fear is real. And so you stop telling the story of fear and you begin to live the truth of grace. Grace is an aspect of the love of God which is most like the state prevailing in the unity of truth. So grace is an aspect of that totality of love. It is the closest we can come on earth to that unity of truth, the truth of the unity of all beings. Because we often think if we are one, how come we're not acting like it? It's because we're not allowing for it. We're not creating the space for grace. We're continuing to tell the story of the world of fear. And we're attempting, this is interesting, we're not succeeding. You're not succeeding with me, I'm sorry. But you're not succeeding with me in convincing me that it's real. You continue to tell that story of fear in an attempt to teach an impossible learning to divine beings. I've got a definition of Satan. It's an acronym. Stupid attempts to actualize nothing. It's not real and it doesn't exist, but you keep trying to convince me that that's reality, that that's what I am, that I have to participate in the hate and the fear. I would rather live in grace and be released by the world, by grace from the world of fear. I'm being released. I live by grace and I am released. If you want release from all of the fear that's going on, grace will do it. And it's the only thing really that's going to do it. I'm going to continue just a couple more sentences here. Grace is the world's most lofty aspiration, for it leads beyond the world entirely. It is past learning, yet it is the goal of learning. For grace cannot come until the mind prepares itself for true acceptance. Grace becomes inevitable instantly to those who have prepared a table where it can be gently laid and received, an altar clean and holy for the gift. So that's just our wonderful opportunity. And the most exciting adventure there is to create a space where grace can be laid gently upon your heart. To me, that's the greatest adventure there is. How much can I receive in this moment? How much grace can I experience in this now moment? Lily told me that she was Again, reading The Power of Now from Eckhart Tolle. And he puts forth in that book that the quality of your life is going to depend on your relationship to the present moment. How much grace, how much can I experience in this present moment? Wherever you are, if I'm not telling a story about it, I'm going to be experiencing it as it is. Slow down with your stories, with your descriptions, with your definitions about what's going on, and let that story go for a second and experience the energy of the truth of what's happening right here and right now. Next time you're walking on the beach, experience the truth of that. Experience the magnificence of that when you're out under the stars and you look up in the sky and you realize you're on this little planet in the middle of this huge galaxy with billions of stars. And there's billions and billions of galaxies just like ours. And you realize how small your story is in that moment. And those are the moments where I tend to let that story go and accept the totality of the grace, spiritual energy that's available in that moment. You know what's lovely about doing this is that it doesn't take any work really at all. It's just a relaxing into the moment. It doesn't take any money. It doesn't take any effort. It doesn't take a striving. It doesn't take an accomplishment of any kind. You can't earn grace because it's already here. It's all around you and within you. All I need to do is make room for it. It's to be like water. It's to flow with it. You know, Paul, I get to talk a little bit about the Apostle Paul. He was given a moment where he could describe who he was to those around him. And he said, look, I'm the least of the apostles. I used to kill Christians. I was a mercenary. I hunted down Christians and brought them back to be persecuted. And if they didn't come with me, I'd kill them. I didn't care. Christians were the devil. Okay, so to Paul, or Saul at that time, right, Christians were his Hamas. Christians were the ones that needed to die. They needed to be wiped off the face of the earth. They didn't need to be understood or anything like that. Or to Hamas, there would be his Israelis. So they were the enemy. What happened to Saul is he had a transformation through grace. He turned into Paul, the apostle, the champion for the story, not the story, the reality of Christ in you. He was transformed by grace from a mercenary who stalked and killed the Christians to the most ardent and devoted servant of Christ that we find in the Bible. 13 books of the New Testament are attributed to Paul. Now, if he wasn't genuinely offering his experience, if this wasn't a genuine transformation, I don't think anybody would have written any books about him or his writings would have gone anywhere. This was a genuine transformation. He experienced the grace that came through recognizing the Christ. He had an experience. Now, this experience wasn't an experience of the ego or from the individual personality. It was from spirit. But it was interesting because it's spirit connecting with his spirit. The voice was heard where? In his head. He got knocked off his horse by the spiritual energy, and it said, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Something within him, the voice within him was saying, why are you persecuting me? Now, what's interesting here is he also became blind physically to the world for 3 days. He became physically blind. He could no longer tell the story that he was telling himself, that he was perceiving with those eyes. He had to see with spiritual vision. He switched from looking out from the ego, the world of separation and fear, to looking from within with the vision of Christ. He's changed his eyes. No more human perception, but Christ vision. This is what happened to Paul. So he's describing this, and he says, well, through all of that, it's only by grace, by the grace of God, I am what I am. I am a spiritual being. Yeah, I was a mercenary, I was all these things, but I came to the conclusion that I am one with Christ. And so therefore, he's the one who began representing Christ in the world. And I find that fascinating because he was the one who was the most convinced that whoever was following this teaching was wrong. Isn't that incredible? The most convinced. He had the biggest signs on his lawn. He had the flags flying from the back of his truck. He was the most convinced that what he was doing was right. But that moment of spiritual reckoning that just happened between him and a moment of grace was all the difference. And so all I'm going to ask each of us now is to represent that moment, represent that grace. Not that I have a point of view that's better than yours. No, that maybe both of our points of view fall short of the experience of grace. I'm not going to give a worldly alternative to you. I want to let the Spirit determine the outcome. I do. All my worldly outcomes are going to lead to the same separation. Yeah, none of us are right. Oh my God, you want to be right or happy? Exactly, thank you. That says a happy person over here. So grace is going to allow me to be happy and allow Spirit to work its miracle working power in my life and in the life of all of us. And that's what will bring about peace in our world, is creating that space for grace. I want to end today, I just want to offer you the statement for peace from Unity Worldwide Ministries, because it really stands for creating a space for grace in this world. Unity stands for peace in the presence of conflict. Unity stands for love in the presence of hate, for forgiveness in the presence of injury. Unity honors the many names for God, the many paths to God, the many ways to worship God. For there is only one power and one presence of God, and that God loves each of us equally. It is therefore the position of Unity Worldwide Ministries and Unity World Headquarters and Unity Village to urge all nations, and I would say all individuals, their leaders, their people, to turn to God by whatever the name for guidance during these challenging times and pursue peace, not war. For this is what honors the God of all our faith traditions. Unity stands for peace in our lifetime. Unity stands for peace. Right here and right now. In our community. In our families. In our individual relationships. And in our world. I don't ever want to hear another person say, we won't see peace in my lifetime, because you're creating your world exactly how you see it in your mind. I see peace happening right here and right now, and accepted right here and right now is the only way forward for humankind. for me individually, for us as a community, and for the world. Let us all make a commitment to create space for grace. So it is. Amen.
You have been watching the message from our Sunday celebration service here at Unity on Cape Cod, providing a positive path for spiritual living. Please join us every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. at 147 Walton Ave, Hyannis, Mass., and visit us online at unityoncapecod.org. This video was made possible in part through a grant from Unity Worldwide Ministries and the Templeton Foundation.